What's crack-a-lackin', y'all? This message might resonate with you if you have had a stunted childhood. And like myself, if this resonates, it's when things happen during your childhood and formative years that could be perceived as traumatic or just a lot of pain might have been experienced, loss of parents, loss in general, friends, family. It could be anything, just a lot of severity in the early years of life that caused you to have to at least feel like you had to abandon your childhood in exchange for being available for your family. An example for myself, losing a parent at a young age, I felt an immeasurable pressure to somehow show up in some sort of an adult way that was not making it harder on my family or my mother or things like this, right? So what ends up happening, and let's go, I was 11, it's true. When I was 11, instead of having those 11 years to 18 years of kind of natural development and childishness and childish wonder and all those kind of things, in a lot of ways, it got replaced with fear and worry about security and the outcome in the future, and if we were going to be okay. We were okay, but we didn't come from. I didn't come from financial stability in the sense where you felt that you were just going to be all good. So it was a real concern, and it felt like it was a real concern ever since that moment, and it changed me. It changed everything that happened from that point forward. And I felt like I had to be strong. I felt like I had to show up for my mom and my brother and my family or whatever it was. And, the short of it is that what happens is you kind of get like an undercooked childhood. You get an underdeveloped inner child. And there's a lot of things that inner child needed that they were not able to receive at that time. And there's no blame. There's no blame to go around to anybody, but what there is recognition of what did happen, because I spent a lot of time back then not allowing what happened to do what it needed to do. I didn't let myself feel how I needed to feel. I didn't let myself release how I needed to release. I did not let myself seek, any guidance or help or anything like that. A lot of things didn't happen. And so as that manifests later in life and into adulthood, scarcity consciousness and the security, the feeling of security behind that was going to be a massive theme for me. But then even larger than that was this cloak, this dark, wet blanket over my life that made me think that everything was hard. Everything was going to be hard. Life was going to be uphill, and I was going to have to break my back working to be able to meet the minimum, to meet the standard. Standard being able to live somewhere and afford it, right? And not be a nuisance to others somehow. Meiwaku desho, if you know what I'm talking about. And it's deep, and let me know if if you've had any of these experiences. If there's anybody else that kind of, didn't realize how much they did not allow to occur during those years. And so when you have that stunted inner child, which it doesn't have to be death, it can happen from any number of reasons, but what it creates is real. And so fast forward to today, where we're looking at concepts of, fulfillment and passion and purpose and all those kind of things. We're learning that our inner child can help direct us towards those goals, that our inner child is the compass of our lifetime and knows best and has always been trying to communicate with us and let us know, what we really light up about and what we really feel excited about. And that can be extremely challenging for adults that have made it through decades of a lifetime and are halfway through, let's say. And they're working their job and they're paying their bills and they're supporting their family, but they feel They might feel lost. They might feel dead end. They might feel Groundhog Day. They might feel like they're doing the things and going through the motions, but they're not fulfilling a purpose or a passion. And then even beyond that, which often in these midlife kind of years, some call midlife crisis, but a lot of that has to do with the reflection that, at some point we were sold an idea, in our, let's say, our teenage years, in our early 20s, that has us then chasing goals through our 20s and 30s, that have us arrive at places in our 40s that we believe is what we were supposed to do and what we were supposed to achieve, only to find that the achievement of it brings no fulfillment, right? To be middle management in the corporate world at 40 with a decent salary to try to provide for your family is, there's no shame in that. But there also may be no passion in that. There may be no purpose in that. Fulfilling your own purpose, I mean. There's always the purpose to bring the bread on the table and support the family, but are you fulfilling that inner being? So this inner child and its ability to redirect you and course correct and help you navigate when you reach a point in your life where you want to make those transformations and reorient to your purpose, passion, bliss, fulfillment, and most, your highest excitement and your highest timeline and potentially your highest abundance, we look to the inner child. And in my own, work on that, which is current, it's ongoing, I'm actually even discovering parts of it as I speak to you right now, is that because things got difficult early for me, and because that caused my mindset and my outlook to shift so drastically into a general theme of a lack of security meaning feeling safe that I'd always have a home, safe that there'd be enough money, safe that there'd be enough food in the fridge, safe that everybody in my family would be okay. It was that basic security that I did not feel and that I unknowingly carried into my 20s, 30s, 40s. And man, I got to do something about that, right? If I want to unclip my wings, if I want to thrive, if I really want to take it there, I've got to be able to access things I've been unable to access. And so I was convinced a long time ago that, there was like the serious side of life and then there was the playful side of life. And I'm like playful. I love to laugh and clown and all that stuff. And yet, oh shit, tuck it in when things have to get real. Excuse, yes. How can I help you, sir? Right? Like, you snap out of it, you tuck it in, and you go do the work so that you can clown on the weekend kind of thing. And that separation of church and state in terms of your actual personality and clown and laughter and joy, and then that thing you got to do to bring the bread, maybe that's been the problem. Maybe that's why so many people are suffering with existential crisis, because what if we could merge them, right? And so I thought all these things were, I thought the parts of me that were clowning were the childish parts of me that needed to get tucked in and that needed to not be seen when I was pursuing, the bag or scratch or career or any of that kind of stuff. And now that I understand that, had my inner child really had what it needed through those years, that things could be very different and I could look at things differently, I realize how profound honoring your inner child really is and what it can truly do for you. And when it doesn't get hijacked and when it doesn't get underdeveloped and undercooked, it can cause some of the most magical things that you and I all love and adore, right? And so what you realize, so there may, not to acknowledge a naysayer here, you're always going to have naysayers, but I'm sure there's people that feel like, yeah, that sounds good, but yeah, right, like get real, life's, all these things. But here's the thing. When you truly allow that inner child to just go ham, it might create Pokemon. It might create Luffy and One Piece. It might create Jenga. It might create, Marble Madness. It might create Choose Your Own Adventure books. It might think of Matilda. It might think, when that inner child is free, to truly express and chase its own dream, it can manifest into the most magical of things. So what I never understood about what I thought was childish was that, what do you guys think all those companies are? Do you think that Pokemon, as big as it is, and you know how massive it is and how long it's been going, do you think that's run by a 6-year-old? Do you think that's it was probably a 6-year-old with an incredible idea that is probably now 56 to 63 years old and is extremely wealthy. One Piece, that guy was young. Now it's been running for how long? These are examples of inner childs that were never squashed, that were never told. Well, maybe they were told, but they didn't listen, so good on you. But weren't given the limitation program and that darkness program of it's got to look a certain way, and you've got to get rid of those childish tendencies so that you can focus on the real thing, because turns out that's not what this experience is all about. And the inner child truly holds that wisdom. There's another guy, naming them is not really important, but I can identify with the story. And let's say you grew up and you loved sports and all that kind of stuff, but again, you were told you had to go to school, get the job, move to the city, get the job, work up the ladder, and so on and so forth. And now you're in your 40s or late 30s, and something pivots and shifts, and you start doing something online where you're kind of like covering sport a little bit in your own little YouTube channel, and it grows and you grow connections, and eventually you get hired by a network to be a sportscaster or something like that. And now all of a sudden you find yourself on the sidelines of the biggest game of the year, and you have been paid to fly there. You have been paid, your hotel has been paid, and your food has been paid, and you are being paid to be on that field of your favorite game with your favorite teams in the favorite moment. You are being paid to give your opinion of what's going on that field. And that person, who's a real person, by the way, spent 20 years of their life grinding, doing that other thing that we were all convinced of because it was more serious, and it was like, you got to do the things and be responsible and all that stuff, when really their inner child just always loved the game and always wanted to be on the field and always played when they were a kid, and somewhere along the line didn't feel like that could continue. And yet with a few pivots and a few moments much later in life, much closer to 40, they were able to make that pivot. They didn't think much of it, but it had so much magnetism and gravitas and everything swirling around it. It magnetized and collapsed the quantum reality into them being a full-time sportscasting, salary earning, fairly celebrated personality in that world. And that's their inner child manifest. That's their inner child given the wings, given the keys to the car. So we've got example upon example of this. And, I always, when I was first learning about like this idea of Socrates and Plato and all this, I don't know what I thought, but I thought these guys were sitting in cold stone, like magnificent chairs where they were just pontificating all day in robes and eating grapes. And I didn't understand. I'm like, man, what kind of world, was it that you were able to do that, as a job or as what you offered to your society in exchange for something, because at that time I really, I actually identified with it, and I didn't understand, why our current culture didn't quite have that particular route, or at least it seemed like it didn't. And, so anyway, I'm here rapping, but it always resonated with me, sitting there and discussing things and getting into them and being able to debate them without cancellation. How about we just like learn and grow together, and have opposing ideas, and maybe together we can beat around a bush and get somewhere better than we started, instead of this idea of people are right and wrong, which creates no advancement. It only creates war. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up, but inner child, so dope. Mine was stunted. I've realized that. I pour into it every day. I try to give as much love and attention to it today as I can, because by the way, Yes, you can go back in time. Yes, you can go back to that young version of yourself as the adult version. You can comfort that child and give that child what it didn't have when it needed it. You know, I can go back and give that 11-year-old version of myself, you know, I can come back and say to it, hey, everything's going to work out. It's going to be okay. You're going to be secure. Things are going to be, you're going to have a beautiful family. It's going to be really dope. And that's what I've done. I've gone back. I do that. And it has helped console that inner child and allow them to feel the things and receive the things that they didn't receive at that time. So to heal those inner child wounds, while at the same time being able to acknowledge it and being like, and now what you could do for me is give me the wisdom back of everything I lost when I decided so long ago that it wasn't possible, that I had to tuck in those parts of me that might be the most valuable parts of me and the most valuable parts of you. And so I'm on that journey. I'm probably going to figure it out real time, you know, in front of you guys. But yeah, I go a lot easier on myself. I'm not the harsh critic I once was on myself. I stopped judging other people, and that caused, or I'm sorry, I stopped judging myself, which caused me to stop judging other people. And it completely ended the judgment loop, which kind of ended the criticism loop, which allowed me to actually like love on myself and understand that I don't really make mistakes. I just do things that I learn from and that inform me and help me grow. And now I have a chance to kind of recalibrate and put my inner child first and allow them to show me the way and show me what I forgot that might be most inherent and instinctive to me, so that I can be the best version of myself and therefore have that kind of magnetism and have that kind of that lust for life, you know, that only your inner child can bring you. So think about it for yourselves. You know, what is it that, you know, 3 things I like to think about are like, what are the, you know, what did you always dream of? What was like the dopest, most exciting idea you had as a child that you always wanted to do? Number 2, what was the thing that you lost track of time doing? Like, you know, you would do it and all of a sudden 5 hours would go by. And then number 3, what did you do in love that somebody came along and told you couldn't do, or that wouldn't translate into adulthood, career, money, what have you, that you could kind of relook at and wonder to yourself, is there wisdom? Is there information? Is there gold somewhere inside of these things, these 3 questions for myself that can help inform how I'm going to move forward? Because you can make money, you can make career, and you can make a path out of absolutely anything. And it's never too late. And the inner child most certainly is going to thrive and be so happy to finally be acknowledged again and to get back in the driver's seat with you, co-piloting this lifetime and, you know, helping you find the easiest path, the path of least resistance, the most abundant path, the most fulfilling path, and all of it. So that's all I got. I love you guys. Many blessings. Peace.